Hello, and welcome to Cuyahoga Arts and Culture's 2024 Project Support Panel. I am Maya, and I'm here with my fellow CAC staff, Devon, who is our co-chair, as well as Laura, Julia, Jill, Meg, and Jake. For audiences joining us online, you can find the captioning by clicking the live transcription button at the bottom of your page. Thank you to our panelists for serving on our interactive public panel, learning about our process, applicants, and funding criteria. And thank you to our listeners for joining us. Cuyahoga Arts and Culture is the local public funder for arts and culture in Cuyahoga County. Our mission is to inspire and strengthen the community by investing in arts and culture. The purpose of our project support grant making is to promote access and encourage the breadth of arts and cultural programming in our community by supporting Cuyahoga County-based projects. Before we begin, we want to acknowledge that the land that we stand on and the place that we call Cuyahoga County is land that was claimed by the United States government through force, displacement, and treaties negotiated in bad faith. We acknowledge those of the Shawnee, Miami, Erie, Ottawa, Potawatomi, and Haudenosaunee Confederacy whose lands we stand on, and the thousands of Native Americans representing over 100 tribes who currently live in Northeast Ohio today. We thank the Lake Erie Native American Council for helping us to develop this land acknowledgement. We also want to take a moment to lift up CAC's value of equity. We choose to lead with racial equity in our work because the creation and perpetuation of racial inequalities is embedded into government and grant making. We confront the white supremacy that resides in our work because racial inequities across all indicators of success are deep and pervasive. We also recognize the power and potential that organizations who produce arts and cultural programming have as bearers of culture. These institutions have the power to write the narrative about who belongs and who is valued. We encourage arts organizations to connect with resources to advance equity in your own work. You can visit cacgrants.org/equity to learn more. It's important to note that CAC does not make grants or funding decisions on the basis of race, color, sex, gender identity, sexual orientation, national origin, religion, disability, or any characteristic protected by law. I'd like to introduce Executive Director Jill Paulson with some words for our panelists and applicants.
Thank you, Maya, and thank you so much for taking the lead and sharing this. I know it'll go really smoothly with your co-chair, Devon. My remarks are short, and they're just, again, to publicly thank you all for doing this work. Let's start with the applicants, right? You spent a long, long time doing this work, and we're here cheering you on as you move through the process. I also want to thank our panelists who are really great professional extensions of our staff and bring important perspectives. So thank you for the time. And then I want to thank my teammates who are always doing amazing work year round to make this come off seamlessly. So thank you to everyone. It is important that we do our panels in public. Transparency is important to us as a public agency. And then I'm just going to reiterate what you've heard multiple times, right? Both for the listeners and for our panelists is our funding criteria are super important to us. That's what grounds this entire process. And be on the lookout and listen for those words so we know that everyone is getting a fair shake and that we're doing a great job and justice with the excellent work that's going to be before you today. So with that, I'm going to sign off and I'm going to watch online, but thank you all so much and good luck.
Great, thank you so much, Jill. Thank you. At this point, I'll ask each panelist to introduce themselves. Please share your name and gender pronouns, where you're located, and your professional connection to arts and culture. And I'm going to paste the order in our chat. So if you could just follow along in the order, and you can kick us off, Jenny.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Jenny Cohn, she, her, hers. I'm based in Los Angeles, California, and I'm a consulting analyst for TRG Arts, which is a data analytics and arts and culture marketing and development consulting firm.
Thanks, Jenny. Michael Greer, he, him. I'm also a light-skinned black male with no hair and wire rim glasses for anyone that would benefit from that. I'm the president and CEO at an organization called Arts Fund in Seattle, Washington. We are the state's largest unrestricted arts and culture funder and capacity builder. Pleasure to be here.
Hi, everyone. Deontay Griffin Quick, he, him, his, calling in from Avenel, New Jersey, land of the Lenni Lenape people. I am an actor as well as the managing director of external affairs for the Artist Communities Alliance, an international service organization for artists and artist residency programs. Thank you.
Hi there, I'm Celia Hughes, she, her. I am a cis white older female located in Austin, Texas. I'm the executive director of Art Spark Texas, which is a disability and arts organization existing and serving the entire state of Texas. And I'm delighted to be here.
Hello, my name is Elena Velasco. My pronouns are she and ella. I am a theater maker, director, choreographer, freelance in the occupied lands of the Piscataway, which is basically the DC area. I am also a theater professor at Bowie State University, which is Maryland's oldest HBCU, and thankful to be here.
Thank you to our wonderful panelists. Thank you for sharing your time and your expertise with us this afternoon. Now I'll walk through how the review process will work for those following the live stream. I will introduce each applicant, organization, and their project. I'll then lead the panel through a discussion focusing on each of our funding criteria at a time. Panelists will be invited to comment on applications in relation to the funding criteria. We'll have 3 minutes for public benefit, 2 for artistic and cultural vibrancy, and 2 for organizational capacity. Our panel co-chair, Devon, will keep us on track with time using the PowerPoint on the screen. We have allocated 8 minutes for each application. To keep things moving smoothly, panelists should plan to come off mute to indicate that they'd like to speak next. I might also call on panelists to speak if need be. And after we go through the criteria, the panelists will submit their scores, which are tabulated by CAC staff. To our applicants, please do not contact or address the panel in any manner during the deliberations, electronically or otherwise. If an applicant believes that a panelist has presented incorrect information regarding their application, they should complete the information correction form, which is available at cacgrants.org/panel and within the audience guide. And I believe that that link was just dropped into the chat as well, so you can directly click there. CAC staff will review the correction form to determine if it is an objective correction of misinformation. If it is, the panel chair will read the correction to the panel and for the public. An example of objective misinformation would be a panelist misstating the number of performances detailed in an application. This is an opportunity to clarify what was submitted within the application, not to provide additional information. After the panel is complete, audience members are encouraged to participate in the public comment session by submitting comments via our online form at cacgrants.org/panel. The deadline to submit comments is at the conclusion of the project support panel deliberation the end of the day today. So now let's get started with our first review. Our first application is from Bluewater Chamber Orchestra for their project titled Bluewater Community Outreach Concert. Bluewater Chamber Orchestra is planning a community outreach concert in honor of its 15th anniversary season in 24-25. This concert will find the orchestra stepping out of its usual classical fare and presenting contrasting works by Duke Ellington, arranged for small orchestra by CIM graduate bassist Rick Robinson. The orchestra will also perform original works by Robinson, including a piece for chamber orchestra and young choir, a collaboration of Bluewater and Cleveland School of the Arts. Would someone like to get us started around how the application relates to the public benefit criterion, which is an organization's ability to meaningfully connect with its community through its project?
This is Michael Greer. I just wanted to start by saying that I scored this application fairly and would like to see a little bit more clarity on how the partnerships are benefiting the youth involved. And while it's great to have the composer that is representative of the communities they are trying to serve, it would be advantageous to know more about what other specific items are being offered in order to make it accessible and inclusive.
This is Celia Hughes. I rated this section fair for pretty much the same reasons. I thought that the partnership is really, really good. It's a great start, but I wanted to see more about your plans for outreach actually into the community, how to engage the community. You say it's a new endeavor for you. And so I wanted to see a little bit more about what your outreach activities were going to look like. Were they concerts? Were they public engagement? What that was going to be, and how you're targeting these activities to bring in new audiences for the work that you're doing.
This is Elena Velasco, and I also rated the section fair for similar reasons. I did not see a strategic plan or just a couple statements about the cultural strategy that would be used to authentically build the relationships in order to create that space of welcoming, so that new audiences not only are supposedly invited, but where they find their own entry point to begin with.
This is Deontay. I also rated this section fairly, and my co-panelists said it more eloquently than I could have. So thank you all for it, and I echo their sentiments.
This is Jenny. I also rated it fairly. So since this is my first year, I'm happy to see that at least with the first one, I'm in the right ballpark. So that's nice for me personally. But my question was specifically about the connection between the programming choices and the audience that is aspirationally being served here. And if there is a particular connection between the aspirational audience development piece and the Duke Ellington choice, or I would like more context around artistically maybe what that conversation was selecting that programming with the audience development goals here. And if it's just we like Duke Ellington, okay, but I would like to read some specific reasoning, maybe why and how the programming choice was part of the audience service conversation.
Any other public benefit comments? Okay, we will move on to artistic and cultural vibrancy, which is an organization's ability to create a relevant and engaging project. Who would like to get us started?
I can start. Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I scored this section also fairly, particularly around the question of, they mentioned having enjoyable and accessible musical selections, and I would love a little bit more clarity on what they mean by accessible. And even enjoyable seems a little suggestive in some ways, and to who. And much like Jenny's comments in the previous section, wanting to understand the connection to the community and the relevance beyond just maybe a racial demographic or identity that might connect an audience to the composer that they're looking to showcase.
This is Celia. I rated this section strong. I thought that there was that thought when it was a good choice of guest artists, and the addition of the choir, I thought was really good to open up the medium, because not everyone can really relate or resonate with an orchestra, but a choir has a much more universal appeal to many people. So I thought that there was a good step toward creating an inclusive orchestra with the audience.
This is Elena Velasco, and I rated this section fair. Particularly some things that popped out to me was the phrase, the tradition of written music as a powerful, flexible, and emotional that still works for self-discovery and expression. And a lot of the language just was, as was mentioned by a previous panelist, just rather subjective and did not give specific content, more definition about the art that's being created in objective terms would be helpful.
This is Michael Greer. Relating specifically to the question around artistic and cultural vibrancy, I actually rated this one on the high side of weak because I found that there was not enough clarity in the descriptions and the bullets for me to really understand the level of engagement that was that they were trying to seek.
Thank you. Now we're going to move on to the final criterion to discuss organizational capacity, an organization's ability to successfully plan for and manage its project.
This is Deontay. I'll hop in to say that I scored this section fairly as well. What would have provided me a little more context and understanding to possibly score them higher was evidence of seeing more definitive goals and also measurable indicators of success. I think the application lacked that information to really assess the organization's capacity. And then I also had several questions of how they will engage feedback from the community, their partners, as well as their artists that'll help inform future strategies and future programming as well.
I agree. I echo everything that Deontay just said. I also scored it on the high side of fair. What I did appreciate was that there seems to be a commitment to paying artists fairly, which I appreciate that effort, which knocked it up a couple of points for me.
This is Michael Greer. Again, I scored it on the high side of weak only because I did not see any. I couldn't tell what the measurable metrics were for success. And although it seemed like they might have been in there in the survey and in, say, head count and engagement, but it wasn't clear in the application what they were. Therefore, it was really hard for me to attain how success would be measured.
This is Celia. I also rated this section fair for the same reasons that everyone spoke about. I would have liked to have seen a little more evidence of what the goal is for the concerts and what how you're going to measure that, how you're going to market to your goal. I just didn't feel that there was a clear goal that could be measurably evaluated.
I will succinctly concur.
Are there any other comments or feedback for organizational capacity? Okay, that will conclude our time for Bluewater Chamber Orchestra. Panelists, please submit your scores, and then we will turn to the Carolyn L. Farrell Foundation in just a moment. Okay, our next application is from Carolyn L. Farrell Foundation for their project titled A Theater Arts Experience. The Farrell Foundation plans to combine dance movement, visual arts, music, and storytelling by blending these art forms together into a multi-generational theater arts presentation. The success we have enjoyed individually with each of these programs has encouraged us to engage our various instructors to work together on a program that will successfully use all of these art forms into a single enjoyable theater arts experience. Would someone like to get us started around how this application relates to the public benefit criterion, which is, again, an organization's ability to meaningfully connect with its community through its project?
Kick us off on this one. I scored this in the strong category for a couple of reasons. I really appreciated the clarity in their specific community that they're serving. that they're filling a direct community need with this project. I also appreciated that it involves a lot of different artists. And I thought it was a really strong,
This is Celia. I rated this a high fair. They obviously know their population very well. They seem to have good relationships with like-minded organizations, as well as connections to arts professionals who work in this field. But I didn't see any mention of supports that would be provided to the participants other than artistic. Wondering, in this working with people with dementia, there's lots of different things that need to be taken into consideration. And I would have also liked to have seen the selection criteria and an awareness of an adaptive rehearsal schedule. And also would have liked to have seen a better plan of how they're going to recruit and engage these people to involve them in what seems to be a rather ambitious project.
This is Michael Greer. I rated this one strong because I thought that in engaging this community specifically through the arts and like the artistic impact, it broadens the community outreach of art and culture, and so I thought it was according to the criteria, it was a strong application.
Elena Velasco, and I also scored this on strong, but on the low end of strong for similar reasons that Celia had mentioned. There's a clear definition of who their community is, and I think that is an aspect of a area at large, a city at large, a county at large, that is oftentimes not factored into the diversity criteria. But the support systems of how that public will benefit and ensure their engagement, those support systems are not necessarily detailed, and that needs more clarity.
This is Deontay. I actually scored this fairly, just because I had a few questions that needed to be clarified. It said it was free attendance to all residents, but what was the defining? It wasn't clear on the defining factor of it. I was confused if it was just Cleveland, and if anyone has some insight or can refer me to a particular section of the application that provides some clarity, that would be helpful. But there's the question of, well, what about others outside of these parameters? Would there be a fee base, and what would that be in comparison to the free aspect of it for other residents?
Okay, and we are moving on to artistic and cultural vibrancy funding criterion, which is an organization's ability to create a relevant and engaging project.
Elena Velasco. So this section I scored weak. Outside of the reference of the material, the source material for this project being developed, there's very, very little shared about the artistic and creative process. And honestly, it's very unclear how the performance will be constructed with the community. So more about that engagement process. There's notes there about how they're going to use all the arts together, but theater is by itself a multidisciplinary nature. And there's some language in there that does sound as though they're creating a piece with somebody who is not usually in that medium. And some more information about their partners that will be able to help elevate and structure this for them would be really helpful.
This is Celia. I'm going to follow up on that. I rated this fair because I also found the narrative to be really lacking in what the project is actually going to be. I was wondering, is it a devised performance? Is it devised with who is devising it? So again, more information about the actual project and who's involved, and I was confused, is it the same show that's going to go to different locations? So again, I think that the idea is there, but I needed more information about what the actual project was going to look like.
This is Deontay. I actually scored this on the high side of weak. Like my fellow panelists, I was very confused as in terms of what this presentation actually was. I wasn't sure if it was a festival or a devised piece. They talked about combining these multiple artistic disciplines, but not really threading the through line of what the presentation would be. And as an actor and a theater person myself, there was no evidence or actual mention of a theatrical aspect other than the fact that it would be theatrical, but there was no theater, if that makes sense. So not very clear on that. And it lacked evidence of promoting diversity, equity, and inclusion, truthfully, in my opinion, in this, and having some more clarifying answers, even of how they were looking at their audience would have been helpful for me.
This is Michael Greer. I concur with all of my fellow panelists on this. I scored on the low side of fair. And just to comment that I think the approach and the public benefit was strong, and to not forget to equally build out the artistic component for maybe what would be considered non-traditional audiences in the application and in the programming. I think there's an opportunity to have strong artistic programming in this, which it probably does, but to call that out in the application would have been great and would have helped me in my scoring.
Thank you. We'll move on to the final criterion to discuss organizational capacity, an organization's ability to successfully plan for and manage its project.
This is Deontay, and I'll kick us off here to say that I scored this fairly. I was truthfully a little concerned about the capacity of this organization. I was very curious more about this shared curatorial model, again, of incorporating these different artistic disciplines was interesting, but it didn't really have a clear structure of what the presentation will be and how it will be executed as well. But I will say that and this was kind of what landed me at fair, was while that was a concern, I did think that they had strong evidence of alternative planning in the event that they did not receive the full amount of funding that they were requesting or needed to build in some other contingencies.
This is Elena Velasco. I scored this on the higher end of week. The support staff is not as clearly defined, and just knowing the one-on-one nature really that you need with patients with dementia, and depending on what level and what stage of dementia that they're in is really important to note. There's only a couple people who are mentioned as supporting this. It's also not clear, there's so many people on a production team that are needed, and there was no mention of individuals like having a stage manager, there's mention of a choreographer. There's not necessarily mentions of like, are there multiple directors? Are there, assistants? And as well, the budget information, while appreciated, also was rather confusing. There's a line item about marketing and the percentage of marketing that would be put for this project seemed out of line with the project overall. As part of that is to trying to define who is it that you're marketing this to. So that was my reasoning.
I'll add that I also scored this right in the middle of the fair range. I appreciated that they did have an actual metric for success. There was an actual number in there, and as a data person, that I like that. But I had a concern about, generally, I really like the surveying process, but I was thinking about serving this particular community. I wonder if there is another way to collect feedback, if maybe surveying this particular community might be challenging. So I just wanted to float that question out to the foundation just to maybe think a little bit more broadly about collecting maybe some qualitative data outside of the survey process, given the fact that, you know, the people receiving these services might be on a very different spectrum of the ability to actually give that kind of feedback. So I was just that was my question.
So I just have one more thing to add. This is Celia, and I rated this high fair. I thought the budget was realistic, but I don't know if the caregivers or anyone that's involved in the process are going to be paid. I was unclear as to who was being paid. And this could be a fairly involved project. And so just wanting and especially if you're wanting to have this increased participation for the future years, I'd like to see more about who's the consideration that people should be paid for their time, both the artistic personnel as well as the participants.
Yeah, Michael Greer, I'll ditto Jenny in that, like, just a number was great, as something to compare yourself against. But also, I'll also reflect, like, the expense side of the budget was also a little confusing for me, and I didn't know what outcome results were. And that could just be me, but I didn't know what that referred to, whether it was measurement or of the results or surveying, but some clarity on that would have been helpful.
Are there any final comments for Carolyn Farrell Foundation? Okay. That concludes our time for Carolyn Farrell Foundation. Panelists, please submit your scores, and we will turn to Cleveland Center for Arts and Technology in just a moment. Our next application is from Cleveland Center for Arts Technology, also known as NewBridge Cleveland, for their project titled Youth Programming My Lens. Programming, our program offerings SEL and crafts K through 4th and My Lens 5th through 12th aim to develop students' self-awareness, self-management, and social awareness skills, all while having fun. SEL and craft grounds students in hands-on arts while imbuing them with skills to aid in their social and emotional development. In My Lens, students use the camera to capture and express their emotions, thoughts, and experiences surrounding topics of community, diversity, and self-identity. Would someone like to get us started around how this application relates to the public benefit criterion, which is an organization's ability to meaningfully connect with its community through its project?
I'll go ahead and pick up here, Michael Greer again. I scored this on the mid side of strong because I felt like there was a clear focus on the population they were trying to serve, youth and diverse communities, and it felt like in the application that they had a very good understanding of what that community was, what the demographic breakdowns were, and how they were intending on approaching that community.
This is Deontay. I actually scored them strongly on this section because I thought they presented really strong evidence to meet all the criterion for this particular section, and just really had a great appreciation for their ability to incorporate SEL into their artistic practice for their constituents as well.
This is Elena Velasco, and I also scored this section strong. I felt that they provided a thorough description of their purpose and practice with youth communities that they serve. And they articulated clearly how they center student voice and student choice and exercise inclusivity and immerse the program in diverse settings and provide greater access to those who are at the host site.
This is Celia. I also scored this as a strong. I thought it showed good engagement of the students, and I would have scored it even stronger had I seen a little bit more about how the trauma-informed was actually being used with the students, because I think that in this project, you're going to attract a lot of diverse learners who are going to be really interested. So would have liked to seen a little bit more than that, but I did score it strong.
I have no new comments to add. Everything I wrote has already been said by my fellow panelists. So I also scored it in that strong category.
Great. Are there any other comments in public benefit? Okay, we'll move on to artistic and cultural vibrancy funding criterion, which is an organization's ability to create a relevant and engaging project.
Deontay, I scored this fairly in the mid-range of fairly, just because I wasn't entirely clear on the applicant's answer to this particular question of how they would connect to the community through their project. I didn't see any evidence of an engagement or outreach plan in terms of determining relevance for the community, truthfully. And they provided a lot of information about the demographics of their constituents, but didn't really answer the how they will engage with these people now knowing this information as well. There was no evidence of like community relationship building, engagement strategy, or even listening to the community to really determine that this was a need and or a plausible solution to challenges of the community possibly.
This is Michael Greer. I scored this on the low side of strong again because I thought that it was refreshing to see that the organization was specific about representation in their in the professionals that they were choosing to work with, and so I felt that they were clearly integrating those professionals into the project and trying to do so in a way that provided some representation for the students they were serving.
This is Celia. I also scored this on the low side of strong. I thought that they had a good understanding of the project and the alignment with the goals. And, you know, what could have made it stronger for me were all of the things that my fellow panelists have mentioned. But I thought that there was a good understanding of the project, and I appreciated that.
I scored this one on the high side of fair, only because I think this particular organization has a tricky task to show success, whatever metric you want to use for that. In as far as that process of reflection, is this program serving the community to its greatest potential? And because of the type of project and the fact that you're working with students, are they more socially, emotionally aware is a very nebulous thing to try and reflect to see if the program has done its job. I do appreciate that they put some research in their applications to say that generally these types of programs do reduce emotional distress and help improve academic performance and things like that. So I appreciated that they included that. So I think that they acknowledge that this is a tricky thing to reflect on the success of the program.
Are there any other comments for artistic and cultural vibrancy? Okay. The final criterion to discuss is organizational capacity and organization's ability to successfully plan for and manage its project.
This is Elena Velasco. So I scored this on the higher end of fair. There's 3 individuals that are noted here to carry out the programming, but it's really unclear if there are additional contract teaching artists involved. It's sort of implied in the budget, but it's not clear if that's for this project. Because that's just the organizational budget, that was being viewed. Noting the student to instructor ratio would have helped to clarify this. And it seems that also there's more information needed to understand just, during a single session, how is that structured and connected to organizational capacity?
This is Celia, and I scored this on the low side of strong, and I want to take this opportunity on the SMU chart. There was a huge discrepancy between FY21 and FY22, but there was no explanation in the narrative. And budgets and budget narratives are a great way to tell your story. You don't have to just use a narrative. And so it would have been really important and informative for me to learn why there was such an increase, why the increase in the income and the decrease in the expenses and all of that came together. We all know coming out of COVID has had very different kind of effects on organizations, but I think using when you're given an opportunity to tell your story financially, I think it's really important. But I did give a low strong on this because I think that the organization shows that it has a proven track record to be able to deliver this project.
This is Michael Greer. I scored on the high side of fair for a lot of those same reasons. It would have been in the narrative, it looked like there was a lot of background in measuring outcomes around SEL. As someone who is not particularly versed in those outcomes, it would have been nice to see a little bit of that spelled out more for me, but that perhaps reflects more of my ignorance than it does the program. But for these types of programs, it'd be great to spell it out in a little bit more detail for those of us who are reading the applications.
This is Deontay, and I scored it fairly, and I have to completely agree with Michael in that it was hard to really get a sense of the measurable goals of this project, simply because I'm not specialized in this particular area of focus. And while this seems like they have a great understanding of those metrics and have hired professionals to be able to do those assessments, being able to translate that in kind of layman's terms was not really evident in this application, at least.
Okay, are there any additional comments for Cleveland Center for Arts and Technology? Okay, that will conclude our time for Cleveland Center for Arts and Technology, otherwise known as NewBridge. Panelists, please submit your scores, and we will turn next to Cleveland Chamber Choir in just a moment. Our next application is from Cleveland Chamber Choir for their project titled Choral Splendor, Old and New. Choral Splendor, Old and New is a concert that traces how today's composers, including respondent composers from the past. This concert will include 2 world premieres from Northeast Ohio composers, a co-commission with Oberlin College and Conservatory from Jeff Scott, co-founder of Imani Winds, as well as a commission from Cleveland State University student Joshua Estock. In addition to these 2 works, Northeast Ohio will be further represented with Andrew Reinfleisch's in Manistooth. Would someone like to get us started around how this application relates to the public benefit criterion, which is an organization's ability to meaningfully connect with its community through its project?
I will get us started. I scored this on the strong side of the criteria. I thought they had great evidence of demonstrating accessible programming. They had an innovative way of connecting the community, also through charitable donations and partnerships with charities as well, and show strong evidence of investment in younger musicians and also making it accessible to local artists through auditions was all great evidence to support their public benefit.
I totally agree. And I add that I really I appreciate the streaming element component here. I think that's a great way to serve a broader community. But I have to be honest, one of my favorite things is that they say their community are people who love music. And I really appreciated that they didn't try to overcomplicate that particular community. A lot of times I feel like there's a higher, more like esoteric, we're trying to do this big flowery thing. And I really appreciated that they went kind of back to basics of just saying people who love music is our community. And we're going to do all of these, as Deontay mentioned, all of these partnerships and things to widen that reach. But that was a refreshing community to be serving, in my opinion.
This is Celia. I also rated this medium strong. The only thing I would add to this conversation is that I didn't see any kind of consideration of access and reaching out to people in the disability community when you're taking concerts out into the community. We oftentimes forget to look at the fact that there are stairs leading up into the building, or how are we providing outreach or making people with disabilities, because they love music, to attend the concert. And I didn't see that. And the 2023 concert was around raising awareness of mental health, and again, wondering and just cautioning people to be sure that they're taking care of their audience and making sure that their audience feels welcome to the event.
Michael Greer. Yeah, I put this in the fair category, particularly because I thought the virtual component was good to see and call out. In terms of accessibility, I know it's not the same type of access as you were mentioning, Celia, which is absolutely true. But keeping that component kind of post where we were is important, I think, and it increases access for those that, for whatever reason, may not feel comfortable attending the events in person.
Elena Velasco, and I also rated this under fair. I appreciated the live stream. I'm hoping that we get to a day when live streaming is almost assumed, just because I think it's becoming more and more accessible for organizations to allow that to happen, whether they just live stream it to their Instagram or whatever it might be. But for me, actually, the criteria for new partnerships and how those are actually initially engaged and fostered was not as clear. And I would say, this is what's wonderful about having different opinions, is that defining the community as those who love music actually was a bit too broad for me. It's not that we need to have demographics, and I don't think that's the marker, but obviously there's so many different genres of music that exist out there. So I think, when we're coming from a chamber choir that may carry a particular, there's a particular identification sometimes associated to that. How do you, if you are trying to reach a broader audience and change what that definition is, how are you doing that? But that to me became a little vague.
Okay, next we will move on to artistic and cultural vibrancy funding criterion, which is an organization's ability to create a relevant and engaging project.
I scored this on the strong side. I thought they had great evidence of really threading the artistic and cultural vibrancy of the project and thinking about performances and networking opportunities. Again, I just love the idea of these charitable partnerships to have a greater reach within the community. Overall, I thought they had really strong evidence, and they mentioned a three-pronged approach to how they were going to be implementing this work that I thought was fabulous, truthfully.
This is Celia. I'll follow up to say that I also gave this a strong. I really appreciated that they mentioned that the local singers and musicians were paid. I think it's really important that artists are paid for their work. I thought the supplemental materials were really, really helpful to my review, looking at artistic and cultural vibrancy. And so I gave them a strong.
This is Michael. Yeah, I scored them solidly fair. And I wrote that it would be it would be nice to see a little bit more about what was being planned to do to improve outcomes in the future. And I also noted that CAC is a relatively large part of this budget, and just wanted to call that out. That can be a good thing or a bad thing, but it is a operational risk, I guess, when you have a single source.
Elena Velasco, and I scored this on the high end of fair. One of the big questions that I have, I really appreciated the succinct timeline that was shown to demonstrate how this whole project would be executed. The flip side is that I wasn't as clear about what's informing the artistic director's criteria of how they reach new and diverse communities to select artists to build that team like that. So that to me would help, and how EDIA is applied through their selection and curation process. Just a little bit more would help.
Anything else for artistic and cultural vibrancy? Okay, we will move on to the final criterion to discuss, which is organizational capacity and organization's ability to successfully plan for and manage its project. And I'll note that I think a couple of your comments, Michael, maybe were related to their organizational capacity, which is fine, just noting that it's part of this.
Just noticing that, apologies.
No problem.
I'll start off. Elena Velasco, I rated this as strong. I think they provided adequate information to demonstrate that they can execute the project at the present capacity that they have, and that they have engaged past artists. And to Celia's note, they have ensured that they're going to be paid. So that obviously helps to strengthen their ability to execute.
I actually scored this in the fair category. My biggest question was, I appreciate that they have this habitual surveying routine already in place, but I didn't see any explanation for then what they do with the survey data as far as follow-ups or changing behavior, or they said it's great, it's a successful way to get responses, and that's awesome, and that's the first piece of the puzzle, but I would have appreciated some explanation on then what they do with all of that data that they're collecting.
This is Celia. I rated them as strong. I thought that their budget seemed reasonable, that they had the capacity. Again, another missed opportunity in your SMU data for you to really tell your financial story. It's a real, again, a missed opportunity to be able to give insight into what you're funding, what you're thinking about, what's happening within your organization. So again, but I just encourage people to use that section whenever it's presented to them.
This is Deontay. I scored them strongly on this side too. I thought they had great evidence of strong and intentional planning. I appreciated a clear timeline of their work and for ideation and implementation. And overall, I really thought this was a strong application.
I just want to add one more thing that I forgot in my notes, that they said in their application that if we include overhead, the cost of this concert would be this. And as a lifetime artistic administrator, I think overhead should always be included in your budget. It's a very important piece of the way that you're spending your money, and absolutely essential. So I just calling that out generally. This is the only application I think that specifically mentioned it, and we definitely need all of those standard operating costs.
Yeah, see my previous comments.
Thanks, Michael. Okay, is there any additional comments for organizational capacity or about Cleveland Chamber Choir? Great, that concludes our time for Cleveland Chamber Choir. Panelists, please submit your scores and we'll turn next to Cleveland Chamber Symphony in just a moment. You know, it's a very close name, so just make sure that you are on the correct notes and application as we move forward. Okay, our next application is from Cleveland Chamber Symphony for their project titled Neosonic Fest, a Northeast Ohio new music festival hosted by the Cleveland Chamber Symphony. The Grammy Award-winning Cleveland Chamber Symphony will host a new music-focused festival, Neosonic Fest. We will feature performances from various local new music groups at venues in and around Greater Cleveland to raise awareness and create opportunities for new music for the benefit of Greater Cleveland and Northeast Ohio. Would someone like to get us started about how this application relates to the public benefit criterion, which is an organization's ability to meaningfully connect with its community through its project?
This is Michael. Yeah, I scored this in the fair range. I thought it was good that the project was trying to identify gaps in community reach and to to fill those gaps. I think this is a reoccurring theme, but it would have been nice to see a little bit more detail on how the extent to which those gaps could be filled by CCS and how they were approaching that specifically with this program.
It's Deontay. I scored them fairly on this section. I thought they had pretty clear evidence to meet the criterion of what was asked of them. They talked a lot about uplifting and employing local artists, which I enjoyed. Talked about accessible and free programming, thinking about geographic diversity as well. I did, though, will say I would like to see a greater community engagement plan for inclusivity beyond just this one singular partnership that they talked about in the application. And like Michael, just a little bit more clarity on the how they were envisioning the implementation going would have been helpful.
Elena Velasco, I'll keep it short. High end of fair, and I'm going to echo, Deontay and Michael as well. It's the how. The how are you executing this plan that was missing?
I agree. My question here, not having a music background, I would have liked to have seen more explanation of like why contemporary music, why new music, why, and I think there's a little bit in here about hoping to change the diversity in the artists, as a piece of it. But it's like, what problem are they trying to serve here by focusing specifically on that new music? I kind of can fill in the gaps on my own, but I would have really liked to have seen written somewhere about kind of why the focus is where it is in the programming.
This is Celia. I scored this high fair for all of the same reasons. I needed to have a better understanding of how the CSA, the Cleveland School of the Arts, what was the relationship of that partnership? Are they bringing the performers? How does the dance? How does this all come together? Is it a concert? Is it a film? Just a little needed more information about the project.
Okay, we will move on to artistic and cultural vibrancy, which is an organization's ability to create a relevant and engaging project.
This is Elena Velasco. I scored this on the high end of fair. This organization has stated that they are trying to engage a diverse team of artists, or recognizing where they need to address, expanding their team of cultural professionals to be more representative. More about how they are structuring that, again, how would be really helpful, and more about the reflection process and receiving feedback from the community. That was a component that I would love to hear more about.
This is Michael. I scored this actually on the low side of strong. I thought it was to be succinct, it was a strong lineup of artistic partners, and so I thought that was it was good to see that called out.
This is Celia. I also scored this on the low side of strong. I thought it was really well designed to engage younger and more diverse composers. I would encourage you to make use of the companies in Cleveland that are disability focused to engage them in your cadre of professional artists.
Any new or additional comments to add to artistic and cultural vibrancy? Okay, then we'll move on to the final criterion to discuss organizational capacity and organization's ability to successfully plan for and manage its project.
I scored this one on the low side of fair, mostly because I think the goal of raising awareness of contemporary music and dance in Northeast Ohio is a very big goal. And to do that with a marketing budget of $1,000 seems that's a tough road to go down, I think. And the metrics for achieving success here feel murky to me. It just says that you're going to compare numbers, which I like, but I would have appreciated a specific goal here. Reach a certain number of new audiences, or a percentage increase in attendance, or some sort of measurable metric here would have been helpful.
Jenny, thank you for raising your thoughts and concerns there, because I scored them on the low end of strong, and I had no working notes to tell me why. But I think my assessment of that really came from their presentation of the personnel and the folks that will be leading the charge on this project. It seemed like they were all very strong and qualified people, and it seemed like they had a robust team of people to do so, but can understand, where the other concerns would be. I actually thought, the comparing of numbers from the previous years was okay, but would still love to see some evidence of, well, what are your actual goals for this year? Then you can do the comparison in hindsight.
Just one quick thing I want to say. I scored this on the low side of strong. And again, I would like to see people break out their production budgets instead of a lump sum, to really show how much is going to people and how much is going to actual, production expenses. I think it's really important for us to emphasize what people are being paid. But I think that obviously capable of, you showed great capability of being able to do the project.
Yeah, this is Michael, similar to both Deontay and Jenny, I think. Calling out, how does the number of attendees year on year relate to impacts in various neighborhoods? And I think there's I think the organization called that out in their goals and metrics, but I'd like to know more about how they're thinking those two things are related.
Are there any additional comments for Cleveland Chamber Symphony? Okay, that concludes our time for Cleveland Chamber Symphony. Panelists, please submit your scores. It's our plan to turn to Cleveland School of Dance next. I was going to try to do 2 more and then have a 5-minute break. But if anyone feels like we could do a break earlier, if that's needed, please let me know. But if you think we can make it through 2, that's our halfway point. Okay, great. So we will continue on with Cleveland School of Dance. Okay. Cleveland School of Dance for their project Dance Chance, a pilot program in collaboration with Cleveland Playhouse. The newly devised instructional program for grades 6 through 8 will empower students to find new space for physical, emotional, and intellectual growth. The program identifies promising students invited to receive full scholarships to School of Cleveland Ballet. It will be held on site at select schools and will provide dancewear, shoes, materials for activities, and exploration of arts education within the world of dance with final performance. Would someone like to get us started around how this application relates to the public benefit criterion, which is an organization's ability to meaningfully connect with its community through its project?
This is Michael Greer. I don't know if I can say this or not, but so I used to be a professional ballet dancer and was a recipient of programs like this, and I've seen these types of programs in other geographies. This program seemed to mirror what I've seen in a lot of other programs, and they just seem to be very successful. So I thought the coverage, as it was explained, was specific, and they knew the targets that they were going after. And I think these are strong types of programs, and this one mirrored other strong programs that I've seen. So I scored it on the low side of strong.
Elena Velasco, and I scored this right in the middle of strong. I felt as though not only did they articulate a very clear plan, and throughout the entire narrative, it was quite detailed. The individuals who are supporting this certainly understand and know this community. And they've also identified what could be potential barriers, even once they're within the partnerships with these different middle schools, on how they're serving them. So even navigating, like, donated dance shoes is humongous. They're really getting to like details of what you can do to help ensure success and access.
I also scored, excuse me, I also scored this one in the strong range for similar reasons. I appreciated the specific focus on the community that the project is serving. And I also very much appreciated that they called out that all of the supplies that students need to do this would also be included, so that there is not a barrier of access once people are in the room. I really appreciated that they specified that.
This is Celia. I also scored this strong. My one observation that's different from my fellow panelists is that I was just wondering, ballet is, within the dance world has been fairly exclusive of people with different body types, people with disabilities, that sort of thing. It's not necessarily as engaging as other dance forms. And so I'm really interested to know, how do they engage the students to want to come and join this activity, and how do they, and how are they welcomed into this space and accommodated? I think that there's 2 really strong partners here. I have no doubt that they do this, but I would have liked to have seen a little mention of that in the application.
Celia, thank you for naming that. I think, because I found that to be a common trend amongst many of these applications, truthfully, and I would love to explore this offline at some point with CAC, of just this idea that we have some very classical, if you will, use that word however you would like to, artistic forms and artistic genres within this pool of applicants, but really thinking about the diversity of this county and the diversity of the constituents that are being served through these programs too. There's a disconnect in some ways of like these very traditional exclusive art forms to a very diverse, inclusive, equitable community, and trying to determine where do you meet the people where they are as well. And so I may mention in that I scored them fairly in terms of public benefit, but would love more clarity in terms of specificity around community outreach and engagement around this very thing. You know, I think it requires just a little bit more, and forgive me if I'm inserting too much of my own personal opinion here, but just requires a certain level of outreach and intentionality and strategy to really build the bridge between the organization that's providing the service and the programming and the community that's in need of it as well.
Anything else for public benefit? We will move on to artistic and cultural vibrancy, which is an organization's ability to create a relevant and engaging project.
This is Deontay. I'll go because I unfortunately didn't mute myself back again. But I scored them fairly on this, and I think it was because at first I felt like, well, this didn't really answer the question that was specific to artistic and cultural vibrancy. But what I found was that there was actually evidence of this in other sections of the application, but it was harder to parse through that and being able to connect the dots a little bit. And again, this is not an attack to the grantsmanship of how the application was responded to, but really just thinking that there was the evidence in different ways, but not specifically in the portion that was asked about artistic and cultural vibrancy. I think it does have it, absolutely, and there's evidence of that, but it would have been helpful to be able to pinpoint that when reviewing the application.
This is Michael Greer. I'm going to echo that because I felt like there was kind of there was assumed knowledge. I scored it also on the low side of fair. There was assumed knowledge that Cleveland Ballet was Cleveland Ballet, or like the program was whatever, and that artistic vibrancy was kind of built in, but you had to really tease it out of the rest of the application, and it would have been great to have that more succinctly in the question relating to artistic vibrancy.
This is Elena Velasco. So I'm going to actually go back to some of the comments that were in the public benefit, which is where I placed it in artistic and cultural vibrancy, because one of the questions is something that's engaging and relevant, and the relevant is the question to me. So I hear in the application that they are trying to find this balance blend between what's quote traditional training opportunities while remaining responsive to the youth performers that are exploring creative exploration. And I think in some ways that language itself already creates a hierarchy. Traditional is loaded, and it assumes that is foundational. And I recognize as somebody who is also like a choreographer, the expectations if somebody is to go into higher ed, that in some institutions that there is a knowledge of ballet, and at the same time, this is an opportunity to recenter what is considered to be a codified, recognized, and highly valued movement system that is not ballet. But how do we do that? And I just didn't hear enough about that to become engaging relevant. Thank you.
This is Celia. I rated this a low, strong, a low point of strong, but I just want to, what I was looking at to add, it was that if there was a curriculum that was provided, but it didn't really tell me anything. I needed to know how you were going to address things within, giving me a topic for a lesson is to me not good enough. I need to know what is the teacher actually going to be doing. I don't need to have a full on fleshed out lesson plan, but I need to know the goal, the purpose, some of the activities, that sort of thing. And that would have helped me, I think, understand a little bit more, would have answered that question about how are you going to welcome students? How are you going to include students? How are students going to be welcomed into a space where they will be embraced and that their wants and interests and will be attended to and hopefully influence the curriculum. So again, that missed opportunity. The curriculum was there, but it was just a list of titles of what was going to be taught during that session.
The final criterion to discuss is organizational capacity, an organization's ability to successfully plan for and manage its project.
I'll go. I raised this as a high fare. My only comment, I thought the budget was fine, and I really appreciate your buying materials for students. But I thought if you're going to pay, I did the math. If you're going to pay $300 plus per student for dance supplies, I'd like to have that itemized. I'd like to say, exactly what you're buying and that sort of thing, so that I can have an explanation as to does the student get to keep them after the class? I'd like a little bit more information about that.
I scored this on the low side of strong. My only question really in this section was I appreciated the comment that they made about the lack of after school programs for this particular age group. I think that's a really I appreciated the way that was laid out as a challenge, and this program is offering as a solution to that very specific thing. My only question is about the surveying students. They specifically say surveying students for interest in future programming, but not that, to me, is like a marketing tactic and not a listening and conversation and responding to how the program is serving the students. So I would have liked, I think if they had just said surveying students and not put that interest in future programming section, that to me feels much more transactional, and actually it didn't sit the best with me. If you're going to survey the students, I think it needs to be about how this program is serving that goal, as opposed to just, are you going to come to the next thing?
I have to respectfully disagree with you, Jenny, just in that I think the surveying of the students, and we don't have the actual survey of what will be shared with them in front of us to be able to speak to that, but I do think if the measurement, if I'm correct in what I've assumed from what I've read, if the measurement is that the students are interested and will return, that in some way lets them know if they've accomplished a goal. It might not be the ideal goal, or hard numbers of, well, what's the percentage of our current students that will return and what's the retention rate? But I think it does, in fact, let them know if they've accomplished a goal. Especially, I truly appreciated the insight that they provided in the application, particularly around the juvenile crime rate around peak hours within the community, and knowing that was the kind of driving force for the after school programming and how they wanted to roll it out. So if they're able to assess that in their interest to then return, it actually is addressing a social issue within the community indirectly, but directly at the same time. So I actually rated them on the high side of fair because of that.
100%. Yeah, and I agree with that. I think my feeling was coming from a lot of the things they said they wanted to accomplish earlier in the application about making students feel like they're included, that dance is for them, that, there's a lot more of that kind of feel in the earlier application. And you're right, maybe these kinds of questions are in the survey, but I would be curious about some of that kind of goal. as opposed to just the like retention numbers. But you're right, it could definitely already be in the survey itself.
This is Michael Greer. I would, because they added the statistics about juvenile activity during these hours of kind of the programming, I would challenge them to think about ways to measure or just shed some light on how this specific program is addressing that or not. And I only say that, and that could be very difficult, but since they called it out, I would say, I would just challenge them to think, is there a way that you can add to that, particularly because that reframes I'm mixing things here, so forgive me, but back to public benefit. These programs are wider than just providing artistic engagement to youth or to specific communities. They are of community benefit and of civic engagement, and so if you're going to call that out in one of your measurable goals, I would say, how is this program specifically, or how are you thinking about measuring the impact towards that goal? But I scored it in solidly and fair.
Okay. Any other additional comments for Cleveland School of Dance?
Just for transparency, I scored it on the low end of strong, but we've had healthy conversation around this, so I will pass.
Okay. That concludes our time for Cleveland School of Dance. Panelists, please submit your scores, and we'll turn next to Kaboom Collective in just a moment. And as a reminder, I am planning to take a 5-minute break when we finish with Kaboom Collective. Our next application is from Kaboom Collective for their project entitled Empowering Youth and Building Community Through Arts Education in Northeast Ohio. Kaboom Collective partners with Morning a Black Star and local community arts schools for an immersive music and arts education project. With Morning a Black Star's culturally significant music at its core, students will arrange orchestral compositions, collaborate with the group over 6 months, and perform alongside Morning a Black Star at a public concert. Dance students will also perform choreography after completing a series of workshops. The concert will also be recorded and filmed for publication. Title song Jubilee. Would someone like to get us started around how this application relates to the public benefit criterion, which is an organization's ability to meaningfully connect with its community through its project?
Elena Velasco. So I was a little challenged by their define your community. I felt as though, and this comes from their statement, is a group committed to fearless collaboration and define community as active participants in community arts schools. It just did not, for me, clarify exactly the who. And so, and please, my fellow panelists, if there's more that I have somehow missed in this application, I welcome that conversation. Yes, they note that they're working with students 15 to 25, but again, how they're engaging the diverse group here is there's less shared. They note that they have a separate program that goes into public schools, there's not as much clarity. Obviously, that's not the program that they're applying for. They will actively engage diverse populations by reaching out to community orgs, cultural centers, and local leaders. How? What does that look like in order to bring in, that community, which still needs greater clarity and what are ways to make sure that space does feel welcoming? That's always the big question when we say we're opening our spaces to diverse communities. What's going to bring you there in the first place? How have you set up a space to make it so that I would even consider going there as a person who may not represent the community that's there? That's my person outside of the organization. That strategy is unclear. So I defined this in the fair section.
Elena, thank you for, this is Michael. Thank you for kind of jumping in there. I felt the exact same way. I actually scored it on the high side of weak because I just found it very vague. And it would have been great to use the language a little bit more towards specificity around who the community was and what exactly that public benefit was going to be. It was great language, but again, using it more towards specificity would have helped.
It's interesting how we all interpret the same and have the same confusion, but interpret it differently, because I actually scored them strongly, but had some of the same questions. I thought it was like the evidence was there, it just wasn't clear. And again, I had to parse through some things. And I felt like at some points the information was semi-contradicting in that, I didn't know who the specific audience was, but then they talk about young people and students, but then it was like the active participants in the creative journey. It was just like, well, who is it? Let's just establish that. But with that, I did have a question around the modest, they talk about having a modest fee, I think, for participation. And I just would love some specificity around that to really determine the accessibility of the program. But I thought that there was strong evidence in terms of outreach, marketing, financial accessibility, and community listening, whoever the community might be. But they seem to have had a plan in place to be able to connect with them, but needed to define who that was a little bit more.
This is Celia. I'm going to follow up on what Deontay just said. I also gave them a strong, because I really felt that they had partnerships, and I think there was a lot of assumptions that were written into this application, in that they know what they're doing and they've done it, and they just didn't put it down on paper for us to better understand it. So I'm not going to go on any further, but I just thought a better definition of the plan would have, I think, helped our fellow panelists understand this a little bit better. Don't make assumptions that we know what you're talking about.
Any other comments for public benefit? Okay, we will move on to artistic and cultural vibrancy, which is an organization's ability to create a relevant and engaging project.
This is Deontay. I'll hop in to say I gave all across the board, I gave this application very strong reviews. I think that they had a lot of great evidence, like Celia said, of like they know what they do, and it comes through even in just the tone of how they presented the information, because I thought there were just strong goals listed out here in the application, and a strong evidence in terms of their vision to build community partnerships too. I really appreciated that, as well as thinking about how intentionally they incorporate their audience into their artistic process. I thought that is one of the most detailed ways in which we've reviewed an organization being able to incorporate their audience into the planning of their program.
I'll just concur. I also gave them a strong, and again, a good curation of your attachments. It really showed the quality of your work.
Elena Velasco, and what I appreciated was the posting, conversation, challenges, and the why. Those have the potential to build audience and followers. So I found that quite just intriguing, and does add a level of transparency and access to the creative process.
I'm going to be the outlier on this one, and I think it relates probably more to my own again, my own ignorance, but I across the board, I did not get a lot of clarity on the project and the goal. And so for me, it didn't come through. I'm going to give it one more read through real quick before submitting my final scores. But again, I scored it on the high side of weak, because I just didn't get the project very well.
I'm gonna jump in. Michael, you're not alone here. This is the one application that I actually found very difficult to read. I was rereading it again as Deontay, as you were talking, because you and I seem to be a good counterbalance to each other at the moment. But I think my confusion comes from it's a very dense application in that they're doing so many things with this one project that I had trouble, I think, focusing on exactly what we're doing, what we're trying to achieve, who we're trying to serve, because there's so many different aspects to this is a huge project that they're funding, as opposed to saying we're funding just the end concert, right? Or we're funding just the education component. It's all kind of wrapped up together, which is where I think my challenge with understanding exactly what this project is, I think that's where that emanated from. So like Michael said, I'll check it again, but I scored this, particularly with artistic and cultural vibrancy. I scored it right in the middle of the fair category. But it was kind of like pulling, like the rubber band ball apart for me a little bit to try and figure out what exactly I'm trying to focus on.
Okay, we'll move on to the final criterion, which is organizational capacity, an organization's ability to successfully plan for and manage its project.
I'll stick Deontay. I'll stick by what I said a moment ago, just scoring them strongly. I think they had strong goals, strong benchmarks, able to really communicate how they were going to measure impact and success. And again, their ability to kind of build bridges within the community is quite beautiful.
I get to agree with you this time, Deontay. I scored them strong in this category as well.
That's 3. It's Elena. I also scored them strong. They have notes about the number of contractors that they have. And so to me, that also demonstrates the tremendous support capacity.
This is Michael. I guess we're all in agreement on this one, because I did score them on the low side of strong, because I felt like they did have some measurable goals. And again, I think it's just really important for people to have at least 1 or 2 measurable goals that they can track over time and use that to adjust, whatever it is whatever the levers are that they think are influencing that goal. So that was nice to see.
I have nothing more to add. I scored them strong.
Great.
Look at us, all in agreement. I love that.
That concludes our time for Kaboom Collective. Panelists, please submit your scores, and we will move to a 5-minute break. For those tuning in, we are going to take a 5-minute break and come back with Lakewood Young Filmmakers Academy. Okay, we will get started shortly. I'll let everybody come back to our screen and get themselves situated. We'll be starting with Lakewood Young Filmmakers Academy. I think we're almost back. And we're all back. Perfect. Okay. Give you guys a moment to get situated. We're starting with Lakewood Young Filmmakers Academy is our next application for their project titled Young Filmmakers Academy 2024 Summer Filmmaking Workshops. With the help of award-winning industry professionals and mentors, the Young Filmmakers Academy's summer filmmaking workshops teach students screenwriting, set design, and acting, as well as how to produce, shoot, and edit a short film. These workshops conclude with a red carpet premiere of the students' films held at a venue that is open to the general public. Would someone like to get us started around how this application relates to public benefit criterion, which is an organization's ability to meaningfully connect with its community through its project?
This is Deontay. I'll just say that, and I'll be done for the rest of this review, actually, is that it was solid. It was a really solid application. I think they had pretty strong evidence in all three of the areas of focus. Noting that they were really talking about moving towards free programming, and it speaks to, I think, the evolution of the organization and just their capacity of where they're trying to go as well. So good report marks across the board.
This is Elena Velasco, and I'm going to concur. I thought this was a very well-articulated, detailed application. They defined, their community clearly, and though the scale, because this is a smaller program, the scale of the public benefit would seem narrow, but it's very clear that they're providing opportunities to those who would not, youth who would otherwise not be able to have them. They've definitely, demonstrated access through their scholarship program, and there may be a little bit more they could provide about power sharing in the community in general, but honestly they and how they listen and respond to needs, but these seem to be sort of also inherent to their values.
This is Celia. I also found this to be a strong application, strong program. Just one comment that I'll add is that there was a mention that all summer students had to completing a 4-week filmmaking workshop, but there was no mention of that 4-week filmmaking workshop in the proposal. So I was just confused about where is that workshop? Is that a paid workshop? Is that a barrier to participation? So just a clarifying sentence around that would have been very helpful to me.
Any additional comments for public benefit? Okay, we will move on to artistic and cultural vibrancy, which is an organization's ability to create a relevant and engaging project.
I scored this in the strong category. I thought the specific films that they mentioned sound like, I really appreciate that it's allowing students to respond to issues that are directly affecting them. And I think that's really powerful. So I appreciated those specific examples.
This is
This
Celia.
is Michael.
Go ahead,
Sorry,
Michael.
Celia. No, go for it. I'll be very quick. Very quick. I scored it on the low side of fair. I wish I parsed together the benefit from the rest of the application, but I wish that specific prompt answered the question a little bit better for, I think it was question number 13.
I actually scored them strong, and what I will call out is that the increase in female presenting students as well as LGBTQ students, I thought is a real strong plus for the program, and I thought impressive student track record with their summer workshop and the faculty at the summer workshop.
Okay, we'll move on to organizational capacity, an organization's ability to successfully plan for and manage its project.
This is Elena, and I will say that I think they've provided more than sufficient evidence. It seems actually the organization probably could carry even more. And they, I appreciate the fact that they have an incredible support staff, that it seems, and have added paid interns. Be applauded.
I'm going to jump in, being that I'm the numbers person. I want numbers in the goals here, some sort of metric for success. Success will be measured, but yes, we want students to work together and be collaborative and produce a film with a clear message. That's a great artistic metric, but I would have liked programmatically if there's some other sort of metric for success, whether it's particular students from particular communities, an increase in enrollment from them, or something, an additional metric for measurement here, or if that's student surveys in addition, again, to how they felt about the program, that might have been helpful, but some sort of other way to measure this project would have been helpful.
I'll jump in here. This is Celia. It looked like a lot of I rated it strong, low strong, but one of the questions that I have is that it looks like it's a lot of the revenue is dependent on the summer workshop fees, but I didn't see any explanation of what those fees would be, because there was talk about it being, I think at one point there was a aspect of it being free or low cost. So again, I'd like to, if so much of the program is dependent upon this one revenue stream, it would be helpful for me to know a little bit more about that revenue stream. But it seems, again, and I echo what other people have said in terms of operational and strategic plans for long-term growth and sustainability. I'd like to see some of that in the actual proposal.
Okay, that concludes our time for Lakewood Filmmakers Academy. Panelists, please submit your scores, and we'll turn next to Maelstrom Collaborative Arts in just a moment. Our next application is from Maelstrom Collaborative Arts for their project titled Incarnations. Incarnations will be a collaborative, interdisciplinary performance that explores the way in which we see ourselves in other people, in other bodies, in myths, ideals, and potential futures. It will be comprised of in-person performances and installations, as well as art pieces delivered via our website and podcast. Would someone like to get us started around how this application relates to the public benefit criterion, which is an organization's ability to meaningfully connect with its community through its project?
This is Michael Greer. I scored this on the high side of weak, again, because I felt like the project wasn't really developed to the extent that I could judge public benefit in meaningful ways. I think there was, to me, it read like there was still a lot of TV involved, and not that that's a bad thing, but it made it difficult to read. So I don't know if I'm alone in that, but
You're not, Michael, because I actually have a really detailed note about this particular section, but at the bottom of it in big capital letters, I say evidence was actually found in the next section of the application. I just don't think the information was placed in a way that was easily for the panelists to read, because I actually scored the applicant fair in this area. I say that they do have strong evidence of artist engagement, but they need additional evidence on how the organization will engage with the public community. They have a really elaborate philosophy on engaging diverse populations equitably and inclusively, but they missed the opportunity to demonstrate, again, how they will engage with these populations beyond the embodiment of their said values. You know, there was no evidence of policies, protocols, or engagement or outreach that Elena especially has been speaking to throughout this process, and no evidence of building partnerships with the community in this particular section, but it is placed, you know, sporadically throughout the application if you read through it.
I agree, Deontay. I just want to add to that if I reread this application through the lens that the community they're serving are the artists involved, then it seems very different to me. And I think that's why, because there's not a lot of information about an audience or community that's receiving the art. It feels very heavy on the people that are collaborating to create it. And that is completely valid. But I think if that's where they're going to lean, then they need to lean fully into that as the community they're serving and the goals that they're reaching, as opposed to trying to do that and also have sort of an audience component here.
Well, I'm going to be the outlier here. This is Celia. I found their support materials quite engaging. You know, the storefront that they have, where the art is being presented to the community for anyone that passes by. I feel that that's a really good way to reach an accidental audience. And I do agree with Jenny that I think a lot of their focus is on the people that are actually participating, not so much on the audience. So I rated it strong. In terms of community engagement, because I think that the type of individual who is going to be attracted to this type of work, I think they're taking that into consideration with the multiple ways that they're engaging people through videos, through the storefront installations, through performances. They're really providing multiple ways for people to engage in the work that they're doing.
Next, we'll move on to artistic and cultural vibrancy funding criterion, which is an organization's ability to create a relevant and engaging project.
This is Deontay. I scored them fairly on this, particularly, and thank you, Jenny, for giving me the language to say it through the lens of defining artists as their community, because they speak in great part about the investment of local arts professionals and talking about the care and intentionality that they put behind care, tending to their artists, which I love and appreciate it. But, you know, I did note that there was no real evidence of like what their reflection process will be in terms of how they will receive information from their community to help inform their strategies and implementation of the project.
Elena, I would say that I felt that because I'm focusing on the process, and I did think that they well articulated a way to, you know, engage in a dynamic and innovative artistic process. And it does seem to be implied from the previous category that the community that they're serving are really the artists who are creating, not necessarily a wider audience. And so in that case, they are creating something that feels sustainable and it's holistically healthy. And they're thinking about the longevity of the relationship with those members. So that was more of my, you know, like engaging and relevant and, you know, sustainable were sort of my key factors here that gave a strong score in this area for me.
Anything else around artistic and cultural vibrancy? Okay, we will move on to organizational capacity and organization's ability to successfully plan for and manage its project.
So this is Elena again. I had a question. A question popped up for me because I rated this part fair. They demonstrated their ability to produce. The question that's not answered is the number in the collective that they're seeking to engage in 2024. And just noticing from the data about the budget and how they shifted from individuals who were paid to the number of people who are now volunteer. That was where I lacked a little clarity about the organizational support. They want to take care of people that are there. How many people who are being engaged are, and for how long are volunteers involved in a project? That's what's not clear for me.
I echo that, Elena. This is Celia. I've once again, I felt that there was a missed opportunity in that financial narrative to really explain what was happening in the organization. It's normal to have ebbs and flows, but don't let me try to parse it out. Just tell me what it is so that I understand.
This is Deontay. I actually scored them strong in terms of organizational capacity. In particular, I love that they had strong evidence of their goals, and also their capacity and efforts to document the process, and not only just document the process as a means for this grant opportunity, but really documenting the process as a means of it being a resource on how to create a collaborative, multidisciplinary presentation. I think, their ability to think intentionally about that and also provide that information as a resource from a spirit of transparency with other probably similar organizations is of great value, not only just to the community, but to probably the arts and cultural community more broadly as well.
Yeah, I just want to mention that I did score them strong in this capacity. I didn't say that before.
This is becoming a recurring theme with me, but I scored them fair in this category because there's not really a measurable metric here. And I think because if I reframe this in my mind, that their goal is to serve the artists that are involved, I think a simple metric for here would be that you're serving more audiences, or artists in more neighborhoods around the area, or something like that, would be beneficial to just help with some of the budgeting and help with some of the planning. And if you know how many artists are currently being served and how many you hope to serve in the future, that would help me.
Okay, that concludes our time for Maelstrom Collaborative Arts. Panelists, please submit your scores, and we'll turn next to Praxis Fiber Workshop in just a moment. Our next application is from Praxis Fiber Workshop for their project titled Praxis Indigo Cooperative. The Praxis Indigo Cooperative is a community-based solution to growing, education, and use of natural indigo. The co-op members will vote on the implementation of the indigo in our community and for each member's use. Monthly meetings will host classes, lectures, and demonstrations to enrich the impact of natural indigo on our community. Would someone like to get us started around how this application relates to the public benefit criterion, which is an organization's ability to meaningfully connect with its community through its project?
I would love to get us started on this because I actually truly appreciated this application. It was actually a good joy to be able to read this application. I marked them, and then I'm gonna be done. I marked them strong across the board on all three areas of focus. I just thought it was very clear, very strong. They articulated how community focused they were, and the spirit of education about the work that they do, and not only how they educate community members, but I learned a lot actually reading the application. I think the way in which they were able to use historical knowledge, even about indigo and their process, was so enlightening that it provided really great evidence to support their case for this application.
I'm going to follow Deontay. This is Celia. I also rated them strong across the whole application. I enjoyed reading the application. I do support their thought that this might be a good possibility for replication. I thought that the strategic plan was great, that they've actually got a plan, they're following it. They know they've identified what they need to do in the neighborhood in terms of community outreach. So, across the board, I scored them in the strong category.
Elena, and I would say both Celia and Deontay, you've definitely touched on the fact that this is a hyper specific, niche. And I felt that they described it extremely well. They defined their community extremely effectively, and how they use grassroots tactics, going door to door in a truck with a loom. Those kind of details really gave me the picture of how they're connecting to the public.
I know that we're trying to move things along, but I just want to say yes to all of that. And I think that because this is such a specific and different type of project, I kind of want like everyone else who's applying for grants ever to read this, because if you assume, like, they don't assume that we know anything about this project and the way it's written and presented. So I feel as if people that are the huge symphonies or the big ballets, or people that are assuming we know what ballet and symphony is, if they should reframe how they're talking about their art as if just like this one does, because not everyone knows, right? They're just making a lot of assumptions why, new music is going to be beneficial to the community, right? And this application doesn't do that, and I really appreciated it.
Thank you all. And don't worry, we are not too pressed for time. If you have additional comments in artistic and organizational, you're all fine. No worries.
So I would like to say one selfish note, and this is Celia, is that I would have loved to have seen a photo of the community gardens. I would have liked to have had a little grounding in that, just in the applications, but that's maybe just me. But I think that would have also really helped to tell the story of how this is a community-based, important project.
Okay, we'll move on to artistic and cultural vibrancy funding criterion, which is an organization's ability to create a relevant and engaging project.
This is Michael. I'm trying to not repeat what's been said. Excellent application. Really enjoyed it. One of the things that I'll call out, I scored this in the strong category pretty much across the board, but in the prompt, we were asked to let me pull this up here. Incorporating a process of reflection to ensure that programming is relevant to or created with its community. And I thought this application did that as well as anything that I've read. So the process of reflection in how what they were doing was relevant to their community and relevant to the outcomes that they were trying to achieve was spectacular. It was really great. It was fun to read.
Any additional comments for artistic and cultural vibrancy? There was some spillover comments between probably public benefit and artistic cultural vibrancy. So it's okay. We can move on to organizational capacity, an organization's ability to successfully plan for and manage its project.
Two highlights in this section for me is I really appreciated the phased approach they've had to this project. So they're not taking on everything all at once. It's very clear, it's very considered, and it's very well planned out. I appreciated all of that. And you know how I love a metric. There's definitely numbers in here. So I even call it out because we set a numeric goal. We'll know if we achieved it, which was great.
Any other notes about organizational capacity or any other notes in general for Praxis Fiber Workshop that wasn't mentioned before?
I just noticed there was an increased reliance on volunteers, and that's not to say necessarily that that's a negative in any way. I mean, obviously, a lot of this work that's done with the public is going to engage individuals who are sharing that time, and that's a way to build community too. Is you have the practitioners and you have participants, but I just noticed that.
Thank you for your feedback. We are going to conclude our time with Praxis Fiber Workshop. Panelists can submit your scores, and we will turn next to Renovare music in just a moment. Our next application is from Renovare Music for their project titled Stories from Our Streets. This project will engage residents in the Buckeye Woodhill neighborhoods on Cleveland's East Side in highly collaborative documentary songwriting workshops to express themselves through creative songs and empower voices that often go unheard. With participant approval, Renovare will share the culminating songs at thoughtfully curated public performances in Greater Cleveland to build empathy and understanding across the broader community. Would someone like to get us started around how this application relates to the public benefit criterion, which is an organization's ability to meaningfully connect with its community through its project?
This is Michael. It could be a function of me not being in the Cleveland area. I mark this as fair, but I would have liked to hear more about the partnership with New City Cleveland and exactly what that looked like. And I think it's just doing this a lot and being a grantor myself as far as the organization, just really spelling out that there's meaningful involvement and partnership with the partner as opposed to just a name for the purpose of community engagement, and just really understanding that relationship I think is important when you've got community partnerships.
This is Celia. I rated this as strong because I felt that the community partner ensures that the project is going to include the community in the planning and the implementation of this project. I think all too often people go into housing projects, residential places of where people live and recreate and make assumptions. And I think that this project doesn't make assumptions. It's going in with the partner that exists within that space to say, we want to create a meaningful project for this space. We've been in your neighborhood, but you haven't been working with us. And so how can we make this work? So I read that as a strong step toward engaging in the community and gave it an overall strong score.
I scored them strong as well in this category because I appreciated the specificity of everything they were talking about. I appreciated that the community is a very specific neighborhood. They have a very specific partnership. The type of artistic process is very specific and really thoughtfully, I thought, combined with the audience that they're serving in the documentary songwriting, as far as being able to process. There's one sentence in here somewhere, I've been looking for it, I can't find it, about processing difficult stories. So I appreciated that it seems very well thought out to me, which is why I scored it as I did.
Okay, next we'll move on to artistic and cultural vibrancy. which is an organization's ability to create a relevant and engaging project.
Elena Velasco, and what I really appreciated was that the process is just well documented, and it reflects this scaffolded experience. And it, the result is that it's aiming to really center voices in an authentic way, and it feels extremely hyper local, as some of my other fellow panelists were mentioning. Just it's really investing in this grassroots engagement, and giving space for personal musical composition.
This is Celia. I found the attachments very moving. And the only thing that would have even made them better was to maybe a one sentence of who the writer was, because I know that the white women who were singing the songs were not the people who wrote the song. And so I would have liked to have had just a bit of explanation, even though it seemed very evident. But I found that was the attachments were a very strong key point in showing what it is, the work that you're doing, and that the process is important, and then the product is extremely moving.
Okay, we can move on to organizational capacity, an organization's ability to successfully plan for and manage its project. You guys are making me come dangerously close to
I'll jump in. This is Celia. I gave it a strong score, and the only comment that I really have is that in your SMU data report, there was a special fundraising event that raised a significant amount of money. I don't know what that event was. Is there an opportunity for it to occur again? Just again to tell your financial story in terms of long-term sustainability would have been helpful. But I felt that I gave it a strong.
I gave a strong score as well. And I really appreciated some of the research and the statistics they put in here about that neighborhood specifically, which really helped me understand the project better, not being from Ohio. So yeah.
Agreed. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, quick. This is Elena, and I gave it a high fair, and really because the budget seems realistic. There's not as much information about the number of initial contributors from the neighborhood. That better clarifies like how this work is being divided out to get into the neighborhood, as well as honestly representation.
Yep, just really quickly, I gave it a low strong, measurable goals, strong team, and there was the whenever possible to collect contact information from attendees in order to track what part of Cleveland. Like there seemed to be intentional ways of trying to track impact. So I thought it was strong.
Okay. Any final feedback for Renovare music, organizational capacity, or previous criteria? Okay, that concludes our time for Renovare music. Panelists, please submit your scores, and we will next turn to Talespinner Children's Theater in just a moment. Our next application is from Talespinner Children's Theater for their project titled In My Neighborhood, Children's Theater as Community Building. Talespinner Children's Theater is celebrating our In My Neighborhood season with productions taking place throughout the city of Cleveland. We are seeking funding to support 2 spectacular productions, Last Stop on Market Street and The Toothpaste Millionaire, a world premiere adaptation of the beloved early reader books, along with family and community events that will be offered free to the public. Both productions will be designed in ways that center accessibility in all facets. Would someone like to get us started around how this application relates to the public benefit criterion, which is an organization's ability to meaningfully connect with its community through its project?
Yeah, this is Michael Greer. I really like this application. I scored it very strong. I thought it was very succinct in all aspects. They called out diversity, diverse engagement at many levels, including accessibility and demographics, and it was a very easy read. So I scored it really strong.
This is Celia. Just quickly, I loved this application. I scored it very strong, and the company appears to be a really good accessibility asset to the greater Cleveland community, and it came across in the application.
I'll just add a ditto onto that.
Anything else around public benefit? Okay, we will move on to artistic and cultural vibrancy, which is an organization's ability to create a relevant and engaging project.
Elena Velasco. So I would say the projects that are proposed here seem relevant and responsive to the community, you know, and the fact that they're engaging the local community to inform the narrative, and they're looking at, you know, intersecting with other service organizations, like, you know, understanding a little bit more about the work on the mobile pantry and the clothing and the hygiene drive and things, how those happen, and inform the artistic process would be helpful. But the bigger question I have, and that all said, I scored this as a low strong, but the big question I have is really around the bilingual production. And that is to something that I center as somebody who's a bilingual performer and director and choreographer. And that is, what is the balance? And then I always ask this because you can say that you have, you know, 90% English and 10% Spanish, and people will call that a bilingual production. But other people will also look at it, and places like Gala Hispanic, where I work, it's, you know, 75% Spanish and 25% English is the max that it will go. So what is that? A little bit more clarity, because that also helps me understand how that is actually responding to the community artistically.
Any additional comments?
I made everybody quiet.
You did.
This is Celia. The production values on the show seem to be high in the supplemental video materials that were submitted. So, and the team seems to be well equipped to present good quality, high quality production. I scored it high.
We'll move on to organizational capacity and organization's ability to successfully plan for and manage its project.
Probably unsurprising. Go ahead, Michael.
I think we're going to say the same thing, Jenny. Go ahead.
I was going to say, unsurprisingly, I love this section of this application. It is super clear. Not only are there measurable metrics, but toward larger organizational goals, which I haven't seen very often in a lot of applications. So it's not just they want 250 patrons at each performance, but 250 patrons who have never been before. And I appreciate their thinking about not only expanding access, but longevity of the organization as audience grows over time. So I loved this.
I just want to say congratulations on your good use of the financial narrative. This seems to be the role that I'm in, but great explanations on what's happening with the organization. I appreciated that.
Michael, were you going to say something?
Yeah, that's it. Great job.
Anyone else? Okay. That concludes our time for Talespinner Children's Theater. Panelists, please submit your scores, and we'll turn next to the Brecksville Theater in just a moment. Our next application is from the Brecksville Theater for their project titled the Brecksville Theater's Traveling Education Series. The Brecksville Theater will go on the road during the spring, traveling to schools, libraries, care facilities, and other locations throughout Cuyahoga County, presenting literature-based entertainment in any space. Their focus on education and performance using trauma-informed practices support an effort to bring live theater opportunities into people's lives. Would someone like to get us started around how this application relates to the public benefit criterion, which is an organization's ability to meaningfully connect with its community through its project?
I'll start off. This is Elena. So I had a lot of questions about this application. There's numbers in here. They note that they're going to reach an approximate 5,000 audience members or participants. There's just 5,000. That's what I'm assuming, is that it's audience members or participants, but there's not any clarity about these locations that they say that they're going to be going to: schools, libraries, care facilities, and other locations. But the numbers and precise partnerships aren't described. We don't know if those relationships have been established. So it's also unclear, even if the conversations have begun. And that takes a lot of time to build those relationships. So more information about that is needed. And then, and what's the basis of that estimation if they're saying they're reaching 5,000 people? I don't know. So I scored this on the weak side.
Similarly, I have questions about. I have questions. I think my largest question for this application is, I think there needs to be more specificity about, do you have a certain age range that you're focusing on? What type of education are you trying to teach throughout these projects? I think right now it's just like, we're going to educate all children, and that is way too specific and not super helpful when it comes to I don't know. I don't know. So I have hunger for more specificity and clarity, not only in the audience, but then how does the particular programming mesh or provide something specific that's a need to that particular audience of children that you're focusing on.
This is Celia. I echo that, Jenny. I really didn't get I didn't get enough information. I don't know how the project's going to be organized. I don't know how it's going to be managed. I don't know how they're going to the locations are going to be selected. Who are the people that they're reaching out to? So it was really hard for me to evaluate it on a community, impact, because I just didn't have that information. I just needed more information. So I scored it on the weak side.
We'll move on to artistic and cultural vibrancy, which is an organization's ability to create a relevant and engaging project.
Yeah, this is Michael Greer.
You went on mute, Michael.
Sorry, I got too many things bouncing around here. So I scored this on the on the low side of fair, particularly in the narrative. There's a lot of talk about diversity in decision making and in the opportunities for youth, but it doesn't call out very specifically what that diversity is and how it's being incorporated into the artistic offerings. And so I think just it's one of those loaded words: diversity, equity, inclusion. Like, the more specific you can be about what that means to your project, I think the better.
I'm gonna bounce off of Michael here because I felt that there was terms that are used here that are just not applied or defined well within the project, like equity, diversity, inclusion. The other is trauma-informed practices. Is that trauma-informed practices for those who are developing the piece because are they devising based off of popular literature? Is it trauma-informed practices engaging with students? If so, specifically what ages? Is it around curriculum? Is it around SEL? So there's a lot of these, terms that unfortunately lose their power because they're not really being applied. And one of the biggest questions I have with this is that they're saying that they're using popular children's literature. What's the criteria for that? What's the lens? Is there a cultural lens? Is there a racial lens? Also, did you obtain the rights for it? If it's popular children's literature, are you looking at things that are in the public domain or things outside of the public domain? Because if it's outside the public domain, have you had those conversations yet? So again, it's just, there's a lot of clarity that's needed for this application.
Elena, I don't know if this information changes your perception or evaluation of it, but I did read somewhere where they talk about the use of funds through this opportunity actually going towards getting the rights to the pieces that they are working with. I believe it is somewhere around question 17 specifically. But again, more specificity should have been added probably sooner in the review.
This is Celia. I would just like to add one thing, that if this is an ongoing project, I kind of inferred that from the reading, that this has been done before. Perhaps build a little bit upon that history would have made it a little bit stronger for me to understand what the project is in terms of how how you went into a community, the partnerships that you made, the types of planning and implementation that went into that would have helped me better understand what it is that the project is proposing to do.
The final criterion to discuss is organizational capacity and organization's ability to successfully plan for and manage its project.
I'll hop in here because I think I've been pretty quiet on some of these, simply because most things were clear to me in my review process, but this one did stick out to me in terms of organizational capacity, because I was challenged by the information that they shared where they went from a 4-person staff basically to a 1-person team and everyone else is a volunteer. And I question their ability to really implement the program with that kind of structure right now. And I understand that these funds would be used to compensate, hopefully, their artists and the leaders who are kind of doing the producing of this program. But again, with the very limited amount of resources through this grant amount, I would question how equitable this compensation is for the amount of work that these folks are probably putting into creating this project too. So I think a lot of the questions that folks have had up until this point in the review process particularly stem from the organization's capacity both to implement and articulate those things. With that said, I don't think I gave my review of that. I think I scored them on the low side of fair because of this.
I want to just say that Deontay addressed the questions that I had about this section, and I also scored it on the low side of fair.
Okay, that concludes our time for the Brecksville Theater. Panelists, please submit your scores and we'll next turn to the Refugee Response in just a moment. Our next application is from the Refugee Response for their project titled Welcome to Cleveland, a mural project by Darius Stewart. We will work with a local artist, Darius Stewart, to create a mural on the back of our home office to welcome newcomers and visitors to our office. It will help to foster a cohesive and welcoming tone on the urban community school campus where we are located, and will serve as a visual representation of our organization's mission, emphasizing themes of diversity, creativity, and empowerment. Would someone like to get us started around how the application relates to the public benefit criterion, which is an organization's ability to meaningfully connect with its community through its project?
This is Michael. I scored it in the middle of the fair range. It had significant community involvement or will have significant community involvement, and it's physically located in a place that will, reach a breadth of its targeted population.
This is Celia. I actually gave it a strong rating, basically for the same reasons that Michael stated. I thought that it really is locating right within the refugee community. It's working with their idea generation. They'll be involved with that. A strong engagement. It's definitely it will definitely serve as a beacon to the greater Cleveland community about the issue, about refugees and issues, and will certainly, I think, make a visual statement for people to become more aware of what the refugee response, what the community is doing.
I scored this right in the middle of the fair category, and the only reason it's not strong for me is because in the community input section, it mentions that they'll have an open session at their annual benefit, inviting ideas and then talking to students, and that's great. But I'm reading that as like a gala or some sort of fundraising event at the benefit, which to me means you're getting ideas from people that are funding the organization, and then the students. And I wonder if there's a missing piece of like a community at large, outside of just the funders and the students, that maybe should also have a voice, or could have a voice, or could be involved in this process in some way. That just stuck out to me when I was reading this.
Jenny, I need to go back and look, but I feel like there were other listening sessions that were detailed in this. Because that, to me, I remember reading something about first what you mentioned, and I was a little concerned, but I thought I had read someplace else, and I'm looking right now where there are listening sessions with.
Okay, I'll glance at it again. Thank you, Elena.
Next, we'll move on to artistic and cultural vibrancy, which is an organization's ability to create a relevant and engaging project.
I scored them on the high side of fair. I thought they gave great insight to process, gave great insight into why they were engaging this particular artist in the work as well. And it seems, from a relationship cultivation perspective, that they were doing things that were community-based and also partnering with someone that has a real understanding of their goals and the project as well.
This is Elena. I scored this as strong. I really appreciated the example of the design process they used for their past basement project, and really noting how they exercised power sharing in the creation of that art as a collective approach, even though it was ultimately facilitated and executed by a single artist.
This is Celia. I also gave it as a strong for pretty much the same reason, in that they were engaging an artist who was skilled in including community, and also recognized for his work, but the ability to attract and engage the community in the process of ideation on this mural, I thought it certainly shows to the fact that they're trying to address and include community in the artistic content and final product.
The final criterion to discuss is organizational capacity and organization's ability to successfully plan for and manage its project.
This is Michael. I scored it in the fair category, solidly and fair. There were some mention of some metrics to be tracked, but maybe Jenny, along your lines too, it's like, what does success mean along those metrics? So for example, they looked at, they're going to track the number of involved community members in the project, but what means we did a good job? Like that's the question, is do we have any idea of what success looks like? I guess that would be a place to start.
I scored this on the high side of fair, and I think this is just my lack of knowledge here, coming from I'm from the fine art world, but it seems that, you know, a gigantic percentage of the money that they're requesting is specifically going to the artist, the one artist who's doing the mural, and that's a lot of what they're requesting for, and I just wasn't sure if this is just a question for me, if that is a kind of a normal thing when you're commissioning fine art pieces. I don't know, that's just a question I'm throwing out in the ether.
I'll hop in to say, I think it is, truthfully, especially for this type of project, especially to the magnitude of which this particular artist will be working. I think I actually appreciated the fact that they designated a significant amount of resources to compensating the artist, just from my personal background and professionally, in the terms of compensating artists equitably to the work and the caliber of their work, and the amount of time and energy and labor that they'll be putting into these types of projects is important. So I actually appreciated the fact that they demonstrated a dedicated commitment to equitably supporting the artistic practitioners within their community.
I'm going to echo that as well, because I think the other thing about this organization is that it's not an arts organization. Refugee Response has other services that they're providing. So those things, it seems, fall into other budgets, as far as like having the space held, and whether it's social workers or counselors, or, who are working with refugees that are there, and any resources that they specifically need. But the time that the artist is going to be spending with that group, even before they go ahead and execute the project, I think demonstrates the depth of this particular proposal.
I like, go ahead.
Oh, no, I just wanted to draw attention to question 17, where they say that these funds will be used primarily by the artist for supplies and rentals as well during its time. So it is not just and inclusive of a commission fee directly to the artist for compensation, but it is also to use, and maybe they could have broken that down a little bit, maybe more so in the budget, but really thinking about all of the supplies needed to going into the work too.
That's what I was going to refer to, Deontay, is that a muralist needs to hire scaffolding. There's all kinds of things that outside of just paint and a brush. So it's an expensive endeavor. And I appreciated the fact that this is a organization with a large budget and that they clearly said the money from this grant is going to go to support this artist, which I thought I like to see that. I would like to see in their organizational budget even a line or something that where they could add in that there shows that their money is going directly to support the art projects and the art activities that they're doing. But I thought that it showed an awareness of the amount of money that it costs in order to do a mural on this scale.
And this is Michael Greer. I'm just going to chime in one more time on this conversation. It is okay for artists to get paid. It's not like the costs don't have to just cover scaffolding and materials and supplies. Like they're offering a service and providing benefit and value to the community, and like we need to pay artists for that. So I just want to say that on the record.
Thank you. And that concludes our time for the refugee response. Panelists, please submit your scores. That was also our final review of this afternoon. Are there any info correction forms to share with the group? Looking to my colleagues. Okay, seems that there are none. Thank you to our panelists for your thoughtful comments and your participation today. I'd like to give each panelist a moment to share any general feedback around the process or applications and remind audience members that they can do the same via the online public comment form at cacgrants.org/panel. And we can go in the same order. If you guys just want to jump in whenever, that's fine as well.
I just want to say thank you for the level of organization that you have all put into this. I really appreciated how detailed and how well thought out and planned. You made this very easy for me to come in and do the work to review all of these. I think I learned a lot this year. So this is, I don't do a lot of this type of thing. I'm usually on just the data analytics side. So I really appreciate the process of being on this, the learnings that have come out of reading all of these and hearing all this discussion today. So I appreciate it.
I'll hop in to say, I think it is important just for applicants as they're thinking about how they respond to the application, really to be intentional about where information is being placed to, because there are very specific areas of criteria that we are reviewing and looking for. And it adds an additional, as curious and inquisitive as we are as panelists, it makes it a little bit more complicated to give a accurate review and analysis of an application when we have to parse through a little bit more to connect the dots. And even with that said, and this might be something for CAC to consider too, and forgive me if I'm misspeaking and just forgetting pieces of our process that have gotten us to today. If there's a unified data or demographic sheet that we as panelists can receive to understand, particularly because we're not in Cuyahoga County, that would, to give some background information, would be helpful. And it also takes the pressure off of the applicants to try to communicate and convey the characteristics of the community that they're serving. And it also, I believe, levels out the playing field in terms of what information is given. And so that we're having, being able to compare data from one single source of truth and information opposed to trying to decipher, well, where is this information coming from and what's relevant, what is accurate. And then again, for us outside of the area, not being really able to vet that a little bit more to be able to speak to it. So that would have been helpful as well. But overall, I just appreciative to you all for the invitation and being a part of the very smooth process.
Yeah, Michael Greer here. Love the process. I think this is my second or third year on this committee. And yeah, I just enjoy reading and learning about what's going on in Cuyahoga County. And for the record, like, I'm one of those coastal folk, but I'm from Missouri originally. And I love to see and recognize a lot of the good work in arts and culture that's going on in the Midwest, and just uplifting that. And, you know, yeah, I moved to the coast, that's fine. But, like, you know, it's there's good stuff going on out there. And I just really enjoy these panels every year.
This is Celia. I want to say if there are any grant writers or organizations listening that, you know, you want to do the art. I mean, and this is like a hurdle. You got to get over the hurdle and get the money to do your art. And I know that that's really hard for some people. And and reading all of these applications, I want to congratulate everyone on really putting forth their best effort to tell their story and to engage us in a way that you can get the funding that you want to do your art, which is really the point. And I think that I congratulate Cuyahoga County in your arts and culture. I think this application is really laid out well in a way that as a panelist, I could go through it and try to piece and see the story and so I congratulate that. And, I just say use every tool that's given to you. If they want attachments, curate your attachments and put them forward. And if they give you an opportunity to tell your financial story, tell your financial story. It doesn't matter if it's not a good story right now, tell it, because then it just shows that there's an understanding that, we do have to make money, and sometimes we got it and sometimes we don't, and so how do you tell that story? But I congratulate everyone for jumping over this hoop and getting your application in, and I wish everyone success in their projects in the upcoming year.
And I'll just thank everybody, as somebody who has been on the other side of it and written those grants and have to pull those things together. And I know the hours that go into it. Thank you for the hours. Thank you for the time. Thank you for the passion. And also, I would say, find what serves you in that kind of process. And that can be hard, but the more that we visit what it is that we do and have to tell somebody else, I think the clearer our project becomes. And so hopefully this has also served you in that way. And thank you.
My only thing is I would love if there was somewhere where the organizations could put their socials or something. So because now I'm invested and I'm going to want to see the mural and I'm going to want to hear about how these projects are going. So I did a lot of Googling to follow these organizations now on social media. So having that in the application would have been helpful to me. Because that mural is going to be amazing and I'm going to want to, take a look at it. And I'm Googling a rabbit hole of indigo. There's all sorts of things now that I'm invested, that I'm emotionally invested in, but watching from Los Angeles. So that would have been fun for me.
Thank you, panelists. Thank you for your feedback. Thank you for your time and your expertise. And thank you for your investment, as you said, Jenny, in our organizations and our community. Panelists, please stay in the meeting as we close the live stream. To listeners, thank you so much for joining us today. As a reminder, if you have public comment that you would like to contribute, we encourage you to use our forum at cacgrants.org/panel, and we hope that you have a great rest of your day.